So second video of the day today, and we're looking at C2 level stuff here. We're going to do sort of kind of like a part 4 exercise here, a part 4 listening, but we're only going to do sort of half of the task essentially. We've got 5 speakers, and we've only got 6 options. Obviously in the exam you'd have 8 options, and you'd have to do 2 tasks at the same time. So you'd actually have to be looking at 16 sentences rather than just 6 here. So we're just going to do this sort of shortened version of the exam task. This is taken from the Objective Proficiency Workbook. We're on Unit 2 if you're following us. Okay, so we're going to listen to some people talking about some experiences. Let's just get straight into the listening. I think you can see the 6 sentences that you have there. Have a read of them before we get started, and yeah, I think we'll just crack on with it. Let's go with the first speaker.
Unit 2. Expectation. You will hear 5 different people, 1 to 5, talking about the first time they flew abroad by themselves and the expectations they had. For questions 1 to 5, choose from the list A to F what each speaker said. There is one statement that you will not need. Speaker 1.
I'd never travelled at all as a child. I was 18 when I first went abroad. You see, we'd always had family holidays in our own country. I think Dad knew he couldn't cope with the hassle of taking a big family abroad. But when I was 18, he paid for me to fly to Switzerland for a mountain walking holiday with a touring group. In many ways, I didn't know what to expect. I guess I thought flying might be quite scary, but in the event, I was actually rather disappointed when we had to get off. On the runway, I just couldn't believe the views. We were completely surrounded by snow-capped mountains, and from that moment on, I was well and truly hooked on travel.
Right, so what did you get? I think it's important in this part of the exam to know that they're going to say something that kind of, a lot of the time, are going to say something that contradicts the other options, right? So there is going to be a reason why it can't be the other options. So let's go through them. A, it says, I knew from experience what to expect. Well, this was the first time she had ever been abroad, so she couldn't have known what to expect from experience. That's impossible. My expectations were confirmed. She actually says in the recording, she says, I didn't know what to expect. Of course, you know, she had no idea what it was like to travel abroad, right? It was a life-changing event for me. This one's the one that sounds best to me. It's because in the last sentence she says, you know, I was surrounded by snow-capped mountains and so on. And from then on, and from that moment on, I was well and truly hooked on travel, suggesting that she hadn't been previously. So it kind of changed her, maybe it doesn't say exactly her life, but it certainly changed her perspective on certain things. Changed her attitude or something like that. So I think it's C. Let's have a look at the other options. D, I appreciated the trip more as I was alone. Well, she wasn't alone. Her dad paid for her to go on a touring trip. So he paid for her to fly to Switzerland for a mountain walking holiday with a touring group. So she was in a big group probably. So she wasn't alone. It was very different from what I'd imagined. Right. Again, she didn't know what to expect, so it can't be that one. F, I found it quite similar to being at home. Well, no, she said I couldn't believe the views. We were completely surrounded by snow-capped mountains, so the suggestion there is it was completely different to what she was used to, what she saw at home. Okay, speaker 2.
Speaker 2.
Well, travelling abroad was nothing new for me, as my mother's actually Canadian, so most summers we flew over there and stayed with my aunts and uncles. So my first solo trip wasn't the big deal it might have been. Canada's a long way to go alone when you're 20, but it was second nature to me, really. I just had to organise myself, whereas before it had all been done for me. And that's quite a big step, and you have no choice but to rise to the challenge. It's a case of sink or swim, really. Fortunately, I swam.
Okay, so let's go through the options. A, I knew from experience what to expect. To me, that sounds like the correct answer. He says, travelling abroad was nothing new for me. You know, his mother was Canadian. He used to spend a lot of time in Canada. My first solo trip wasn't that big a deal, wasn't the big deal it might have been for that reason. So he knew what to expect, I think. My expectations were confirmed. He doesn't really talk about what he expected and then what happened. So I don't think B is right, really. C, it was a life-changing event for me. Certainly not. It sounds like it was just completely normal for him, really. I appreciated the trip more as I was alone. He was alone. Canada's a long way to go alone when you're 20, but it was second nature to me. Yeah, he wasn't saying it was great because I was alone. He's just like, yeah, it was fine. It was very different from what I'd imagined. Of course not. And F, I found it quite similar to being at home. He doesn't say that. There's a lot of suggestion that everything was very familiar to him, but not because it was similar to being at home, just it was similar to other experiences that he had. So yeah, it's A, definitely. Let's go on to speaker 3.
Speaker 3.
Believe it or not, the first time I actually went independently was a business trip to Russia. I'd been overseas dozens of times with family and friends, always with somebody. It was a great eye-opener. The whole thing of airports, planes, connections is a whole lot more intense somehow when it's just you. Make a mistake and you're reliant on yourself to sort it out. And I'd say it also intensifies the whole experience of your trip. Maybe because you've got a lot more time to think about it and make your own decisions. You soak up the atmosphere, the experience of being overseas, that much more.
Okay, so we're not going to look, I don't think. We'll just completely rule out A and C. So what about B? My expectations were confirmed. I don't think she says anything like that, to be honest. I don't think she really mentions anything about what she expected. She said she'd been abroad dozens of times before. So it doesn't sound like she was, I wonder what's going to happen, and then this happened. You know, again, there was nothing that confirmed any expectation, I don't think exactly. I appreciated the trip more as I was alone. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's D. She says, I'd been abroad, I'd been overseas dozens of times before with family and friends, but always with somebody. It was a great eye-opener. She said it was, she went independently. So the first time she went abroad, believe it or not, the first time I actually went independently was a business trip to Russia. Independently was the key word, I think, there, right? So she was alone. She said she had always been with family and friends before. And then she goes on to say that it was a very good experience. Now she starts saying that it was a great eye-opener. Now it changes your perspective. The whole thing of airports, planes, connections is a whole lot more intense somehow when it's just you. It makes you reliant on yourself. You have to sort everything out. You soak up the atmosphere, the experience of being overseas that much more. So yeah, it sounds like definitely she had a better time, or it was a more intense experience being alone. It was very different from what she'd imagined. I don't think she talks about what she had imagined, so no. I found it quite similar to being at home. Well, no, she doesn't say anything like that. Okay, so let's continue then with the next speaker.
Speaker 4. My first time abroad was on an English language course in Australia. It was all so new and exciting for me that I'm not sure I really had any expectations. I went into it with an open mind. I suppose one preconception I had as a city dweller of a vast country with loads of countryside to explore never really got put to the test. I spent all the time in the city of Perth. And well, city living is city living pretty much anywhere, isn't it? I'd say your first time abroad alone is the making of you. It makes you much more independent and confident in your life.
Okay, so speaker 4, what does he say? I think we can rule out A. My expectations were confirmed. Now, he had some expectations. He says, I suppose one preconception I had as a city dweller, I am a city dweller, so he's a person that lives in a city, right? So his preconception of Australia was a vast country with loads of countryside to explore. It never really got put to the test. I spent all the time in the city of Perth. So he's a city dweller. He lives in a city. And then when he was in Australia, he spent all of his time living in the city. So my expectations were confirmed. I don't think so, no. C and D, we've used them. It was very different from what I had imagined. Well, yeah, that was one preconception he had, but he also said before that, so this is quite difficult. He said, I'm not sure I really had any expectations. It was all new for me, and I'm not sure I really had any expectations. I went into it with an open mind. I did have one preconception of sort of a lot of countryside, but I didn't really see that. So he didn't say it was very different to what he imagined. Now, I think the answer is F. I found it quite similar to being at home. He says, I spent all the time in the city of Perth, and well, city living is city living pretty much anywhere, isn't it? So yeah, it's just kind of similar to being at home, I think, as he is a city dweller himself. There was a suggestion that it's a life-changing experience, perhaps. I'd say your first time abroad alone is the making of you. It makes you much more independent and confident in your life. So I suppose so, but does he say it was a life-changing event for him, specifically, as it says in C? I don't think so. I think he's talking about one in general, that it can improve your confidence, make you more independent. So no. All right, so we've got the last speaker, and we've really only got two options. So let's go with speaker 5.
Speaker 5.
I'd flown before with my family, but when I was 21, I was a really keen runner, and I saw this advert for a big marathon event in Japan. I thought this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as everything was organised for you, except, of course, you had to fly by yourself. I knew Japan was supposed to be a really efficient place where everything works well and runs on time, and once I was there, the local organisation was first class. But unfortunately, I couldn't say the same about the trip home, as I had numerous problems with delayed flights and such like.
Okay. So I think this one was a little bit confusing, but B, my expectations were confirmed. I think that's the correct answer, because she talks about how I knew Japan was supposed to be a really efficient place where everything works well and runs on time. And once I was there, the local organisation was first class. She then does say, but unfortunately I couldn't say the same about the trip home, as I had numerous problems with delayed flights and such like. That's the trip home, though. It's not really Japan, is it? So what she expected about Japan was confirmed, I think. E, it was very different from what I'd imagined. No, I don't think so. I think quite the opposite. Okay, so we finished this short video for today. I'm doing a lot of shorter videos on the main channel now. Obviously, if you want to get more content, I'm making several videos now every day and bringing them out early on the membership section. If you click the blue button under this video and you want to help support the channel and get some personalized content and exclusive content and early content, then have a look at that. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.